Hello and welcome to another Big Finish review. In this Big Finish review I shall be looking at the second story from the Fifth Doctor trilogy from 2017, The Contingency Club. A very interesting story, and a story what I was very excited to listen to because it's the Fifth Doctor in Victorian times. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? And yeah, this review has been sitting on my laptop for about 4 months now, and I've just finally got round to recording it, so it's about time. So without further ado, let's look at the cover art. Onto the cover art. I've got to say, I really do like this cover. I just think it's so striking. What the Fifth Doctor there with sort of the whole red background, sort of his hat band, and sort of the outline of his jacket being really highlighted there. We've got a whole sort of playing card background there, which really does reflect the story. We've got the Red Queen, 2 Edwards. We've got a cog motif design there. Got a bishop there. We've got the companions there, and another chess piece there. We've got a cog motif there going along the banner. A cricket ball and sort of a wallpaper design there, which is very nice, and I really do like the sort of difference in the Fifth Doctor banner to make this release really stand out. So yeah, absolutely love the cover. For the side and the back, so if you want to know more about the story, then do feel free to pause to know more about the story. Then we have the cast list there, and the total running time being 120. So for the leaflet, opening up, we have advertisement for the next main range release which is out, which is the Zoltis there. We've got advertisement for Doctor Who magazine and production credits, and the reversible cover, and the disc art is exactly the same for both discs. So what do I think of the Contingency Club? Well, the Contingency Club started life out very differently, as this story was set to appear in the Fifth Doctor box set number 2, so it was going to be in the box set like iterations of Iron Psychodrome, but Big Finish decided to have an Adric trilogy, so this story saw the light of day in the form of a monthly range story. Now I will say this story was my most anticipated story from the trilogy, because Phil Ryan's last Fifth Doctor story, Fallen Angel, was just magnificent. It was my favourite from Classic Doctor's New Monsters. So I had high hopes for this story, as we see the Fifth Doctor not only in the Victorian setting, but in a gentleman's club. And Phil Ryan certainly has done his research on that sort of aspect of the story. The story itself, however, feels very much like a Matthew Sweet story. Now I know that his writing style isn't for everyone, because Matthew Sweet's sort of writing style is quite bizarre and quirky with his ideas, and I can easily imagine this story itself being sort of a Jago and Lightfoot story. This story just screams Jago and Lightfoot to me, and the story does remind me of the Magic Mousetrap, with it mentioning the game. And no, the Celestial Toymaker doesn't make an appearance, which is a shame, as I think he would work really well within this story. Part 1. Now this story does feel like a 1:50 audio with the idea of it, and the start of the story we have this creepy and mysterious style that instantly hooks you. And the part sets up the setting rather nicely, with it raising questions, why can't the club members see the Doctor and crew, and begins the theme of the end game. One thing I did find with this part is the pacing does seem rather slow, but it does improve as the story progresses, and the best way I would describe the pacing is methodical, and I've got to say the cliffhanger is rather cracking. Part 2 continues to raise questions with what are inside the tunnels, but it does answer questions with explaining Edward's origin. And we do have more expansion in the setting and outside the club, which I rather like, but overall this part is very eerie with exploring tunnels, giving a very tense feel, with a double whammy of cliffhangers. Part 3 we have a very interesting cliffhanger resolution, and the story continues to have a lot of questions, making you very intrigued, and finally the story has a sense of danger and threat, as the previous parts are very much basically the characters wandering around, and this part we see the threat finally come into play, with it utilising the underground in an effective way, building the finale. Part 4, as you'd expect, everything falls into place, and what I love about this story, well, this part of the story, is that it takes a bit of a dark turn, with us getting a few gruesome moments within this, and we finally discover what the deadly game is being played, and also it links all the way back to the beginning of the story. And I will say the ending is very satisfying, with this part very much being the sort of action part out of the lot of the story. Characters: the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. His Doctor just slots into this story perfectly, and Phil Ryan has just catered all aspects of his Doctor, even the cricket side being used to advantage. Performance wise, Davison does a fantastic job bringing his Doctor back to life, with him very much feeling like a parent figure, trying to keep his companions in line, especially Adric and Tegan. So we have that slightly old side of his Doctor but still maintaining that breathy youthfulness with us getting the whole curious nature. And we do have some nice funny moments for the Fifth Doctor with him thinking that there is a cloaking device stopping him landing at Heathrow. So it very much does keep in the tone of the early Fifth Doctor stories. Nyssa, Sarah Sutton. If I was to say which companion had a bigger role within this story, it would be Nyssa, with her bringing her calm and collective side, calming the characters down in a tricky situation, and of course her science side is used and great sympathy towards the Edward characters. Tegan, played by Janet Fielding, very much like the Peterloo Massacre, with Tegan being very much fed up of how women are being treated. We have her taking the mick out of Adric, which is always fun, and she does get quite peed off with Adric, and we do get some nice expansion of her character with us learning more about her family, and she can be quite violent at times, especially at the big, sort of the early parts of the story. And the Mouth on Legs does a great job as always. Adric, played by Matthew Wardhouse. Banter is flying between him and Tegan, so we have some nice witty dialogue, and you know, he's quite pessimistic and quite bemused by Tegan's tape recorder, and we have sort of that naivety of the character. So we do have some nice moments, especially when he stands up against stands up to the Red Queen, and he does become rather useful in the later half of the story. So he's not just a punch bag in the story. Mr. Peabody, played by Philip Jackson. Now, you know, he's very much a sort of a henchman character, so he's quite aggressive, sinister and logical, and has sort of a great sense of power. And I will say, how his character gets demised is very interesting. Augustus, played by Clive Merrison. A very quirky character and very much like an old gentleman character, which does remind me of Lightfoot, and a very sort of fascinated by the club, and a very unexpected character. The Red Queen, played by Lorelei King, a character full of mystery who is very much a character in the shadows, which reminds me of Monarch from Fort of Doomsday. But my main problem with her is there was no sense of danger or threat from her, so I didn't feel concerned by her until part 4. And I will say she did have quite an interesting plan, but I didn't feel worried for the characters, as I just felt she was a bit of a naff villain who just felt rather flat. My concluding thoughts on the Contingency Club. Well, it is a very unusual tale reminding me of the Crimson Horror and Black Orchid, and I will say the story does utilise the setting very well, and I can easily picture the story being transmitted, and the music even adding that 80s vibe. But this story may not be for everyone. Like I said, this is quite a bizarre story to listen to, and if you like Matthew Sweet's writing, then you'll probably enjoy this story, because it is very much like him, because it is quite a bizarre story, like I said. Now, the story does have a few faults, like the pacing can be off, and the Red Queen just being a bit of a flop as a villain and just falls flat as a villain. So yeah, if your threat isn't very good, it's not that enjoyable, I don't think, in that sense. But I will say I did enjoy the performances, and I will say the story itself was very interesting, which I do admire Phil Morine for taking such a risk, and I will say some of the risks do pay off, but I can't help but feel the Celestial Toymaker would have been a great addition to this story. But then again, take the Doctor and crew out and add Jago and Lightfoot into the story, you've got a great Jago and Lightfoot story. So overall, I'm going to give the Contingency Club, for all the sort of bizarre and quirkiness of the story, I'm going to give it 8 cricket bats out of 10. A fairly enjoyable release, I say. Yeah, it's a pretty enjoyable release. You know, my main criticisms will probably be the Red Queen just being a bit of a naff villain, and sort of the pacing just being out slightly towards the beginning. But once you get past those things, the story becomes quite enjoyable and quite engrossing, and it is a great addition to the Fifth Doctor main range. Like I said, this story may not be for everyone, because it is quite a bizarre and quirky story, and it's quite off the wall. So if you quite like sort of bizarre stories, then definitely check out the Contingency Club, because like I said, it does feel like a very early Big Finish story. So if you like those, definitely check it out. So there we go, there's my review of the Contingency Club. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you on my next Big Finish review, which will be a review of Vortex Ice and Cortex Fire, a 6th Doctor story. So without further ado, that's all I've got to say in this video. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So thanks very much, and goodbye.